Hello again, everyone. In this video, we're going to do a bit deeper of a dive into the Animator window, as well as add some additional animations to our player character, and set up those transitions between the different animations, from idle to run to jump. So to go ahead and get started, first thing we need to do is we need to add an additional animation or two to our sprites, to which ones we have available. So in the list you had available that from the download back in an earlier video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag in the run, okay? And we're going to drag in the jump. We can go ahead and get that window back out of there. So you should have pulled in the dude monster jump 8 and the dude monster run 6. Now, as we always have to do, we got to go ahead and first thing is slice up the sprite sheet. So change the sprite mode to multiple. Again, we know that with the, go ahead and click apply here if you want, but with the dude monster idle, we knew that it was 32 by 32 for each individual frame. So we can go ahead and do the same here for pixels per unit. And then for the filter mode, point. And then go ahead and click apply so that it saves these changes to the sprite. And then go into the sprite editor. Slice grid by cell size, and we know again that we are working with 22 or 32 by 32. There we go. And it's sliced all up. You click apply, and we're good to go. Now, in the hierarchy, go ahead and select the player, and then go to the animation tab. If you close the animation tab, select the player, and then go to Window, Animation, Animation. Now, you should see by default up there the player idle animation that we had created previously. Go ahead and where it says player idle here in the left of the animation window, you should be able to click that. And make sure player is selected over here in hierarchy. That'll make this something you can click. And drop down, you should see create new clip. So let's do that. We're going to save it to our animations folder. And we're going to call it player run. Yeah. Now go ahead and make sure again that you're looking at the run animation. In the sprite window, select the first one, hold shift, click the last one to select them all, and drag them from the asset sprites up into the animation window. Let it go. Now we're going to have the same problem initially that we did with the idle animation. We're just playing way too fast. It wants to play 60 frames per second. Set that to 12 and press enter on your keyboard. Okay. Now we should have something that's much more manageable. Okay. Now, if we were to go ahead and run our game, you'll see that it's still just going to play our idle animation. Because now we need to set up the logic for when do we transition to player run. So if you go back to the Animator tab, which if you closed it, you can go to Window, Animation, Animator. You'll see now that from previously we had the idle animation, and now we also have the run animation. Let me go ahead and organize these things so it's going to be a little easier to get into everything later. All right. We want to be able to transition right now from idle to run, and from run back to idle. So with idle selected, click idle, and then right click on it and say make transition. And drag that down to player run. It should kind of snap when you get to the middle of the button there. If you click, it'll now create that connector. Likewise, let's go ahead and click on player run, make transition, and go back up to idle. Okay. Now we need to go ahead and do a couple things here. First, we're going to want to go ahead and add a parameter. So in the Animator window, over here on the top left is layers and parameters. Click the parameter tab. And then click the little plus icon right next to the search bar. And we're going to go ahead and do a float. We're going to call that float speed. So we're going to use this variable to manage our to go ahead and interact with, well, rather, what this variable is, this parameter, it is attached to the animation. It's not part of your code. Now, you can access it via code, but it's not a variable you've created in code. It's a variable that is now part of your animator windows, okay, your animator window and all the different animations within it. Now go ahead and, with speed created, leave the default value at 0. Click the left transition between player idle and player run. Go ahead and expand settings. What we've got here is two things you want to change. First, has exit time. Now, with an animation in Unity, it automatically wants to help kind of ease how it looks, how that transition looks. That's more important when dealing with 3D models. You want to ease the transition from one animation to the next. With 2D sprites, you want to cut to it. So we need to first uncheck has exit time, and then change the transition duration to 0. Now we will jump cut from player idle to run. Now, when do we want to go ahead and transition from player idle to run? Is what we do with conditions. Under what conditions do we want to make this transition? So go ahead and down here in conditions, press the little plus icon. And we want to do this when speed is greater than 0.01. So at any point when we get this speed parameter attached to the animator above 0.01, we want to go from idle animation to run animation. Now go ahead and click the right transition, the one that goes from player run to player idle. Same thing here, uncheck has exit time, uncheck transition duration, and you'll see the transition here go from a gradual to a jump. Okay. And then we're going to add another condition here for when we want to go from run to idle. If you click the little plus icon, then it's going to matter upon speed. When speed is less than 0.01, which really at that point we're just looking for 0. When the speed has reached 0, go ahead and stop running and move to the idle animation. Now, there's something we still have to do, so go ahead and click and save. Okay? Make sure that it kept my changes there. Yep, greater than, less than, all that. Okay. And I want you to go ahead and open up the player movement script that's attached to your player. Now we need to tell the animator when to go ahead and change the speed parameter from 0 to something else. We can do that here in Move. We can do it constantly. So in the update method, we want to constantly be checking to see, hey, what do we want to do about the animation? Now, go ahead and up here, where we gave us the character controller 2D, add public animator. Make sure you do animator, not animation. We need to be able to access the animator. Save the script, and then go back to Unity. Click on the player over here in the hierarchy. And if you scroll down, you should see at the bottom here now that they have a animator component. Okay, and we want to go ahead and click and drag up on the player movement script into the animator variable. This animator variable comes from the change we just made to the script here, where we added the animator variable and we made it public. So we'll take this animator object that's attached to the player and drag it up to the animator field on the player movement script. And now we can go ahead and access the animator that is part of the player, which will give us access to the different states, as well as the parameters like speed. So what we need to do now is go down to the update method, where we want to constantly check in to see what animation do we want to be playing. And let's go ahead and call the animator, and we want to set a float. Remember the variable we created here, speed, we created it as a float. So set float. Now we tell it the name of the parameter we want to change. In this case, we called it speed. Right there, speed. And we want to set it to their horizontal movement. Okay? If they have a horizontal movement that is not 0, that means the player is moving, and therefore they should be animating as if they are running. However, if you remember, over here in the little transition bars, we set it using 0.01. That we're only looking for a positive value. If the player starts running to the right, it's going to be a positive value. But if they start running to the left, it's going to be a negative value. So what we want to do here is take the absolute value of horizontal move. And that will go ahead and tell us whether they're moving right or left. Is it a value that is not 0, or whether that is greater than or less than 0.01. Go ahead and fill in this line here and then save it. And then go to Unity, go to our scene, and let's click play, see where we're at. When you start running, the player should start playing its run animation. And when you stop, it should go back to idle. And there you go. Now, this next part, some of you may go ahead and encounter a bug where the animation doesn't play. And that's okay. I still want to go ahead and show you how to set up the jump animation, and because it's a little bit more complicated in terms of how we work with it in the Animator. So, back here in Assets Sprites, click on the Dude Monster Jump 8 PNG. Okay, go up here to the inspector and change sprite mode to multiple, pixels per unit 32, filter mode point no filter, and click apply. And then go ahead and go into the sprite editor. We're going to choose slice, grid by cell size, still 32 by 32, and click slice, and then apply. So now we have the individual frames of our jump animation. Click on the player in the hierarchy, and let's go back over here to the animation tab. Click on player run, drop it down, and do create new clip. Navigate to the animations folder, and I'm going to call this player jump.anim and save it. And then down here in the asset sprites, I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the jump image. Yep. Click the first one, shift and click the last one, and then drag them up into the right hand side of the animation window. Okay. Now, of course, we have the same problem we had before where they're playing very fast because they're at 60 frames a second. We're going to change that to be the same as the run animation, which we put at 12 frames per second. Okay? A little bit more manageable and cleaner. Now, we've gone ahead and we've created our player jump animation. We haven't done anything with it yet, so let's go to the Animator tab. And now you should see player jump as an option. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move player jump over here. Now, we want to be able to go ahead and whether the player is idle or running, we want to be able to jump. So that means we want to go from any state, because we only got 3 states. Either I'm not moving, I'm running, or I'm jumping. So if I'm from any state, right click, make transition, and click on player jump. If you go ahead and select the transition from any state to player jump, there is an option to say can transition to self, and that we want to uncheck that. Okay? We also want to make sure that has exit time is unchecked and transition duration is set to 0. Now, the can transition to self, the reason we do that is because we want to make sure if we're going from any state to player jump, we don't want to be able to go from player jump to player jump. Doing that will create a loop where we'll just be looping on the first frame of the animation forever and ever and ever. Oh. Now, from player jump, okay, saying from any state is how we get from idle or run to player jump. We don't need to go ahead and have each of these attached to player jump. Any state takes care of that. However, we do need to go from player jump to idle and run. To do that, right-click on player jump and do make transition and add one for player idle and player run. Now for player idle, we want to go ahead and check and see. When is it okay to move from player jump to player idle? When is it okay to go from this animation to this one? Okay. Now with the transition selected, just like we've done so far, go ahead and uncheck has exit time and set the transition duration to 0. Now we want to make sure that we're going to go from player jump to player idle if, for instance, the player's speed is less than 0.01. Get that first 0 back. Okay. If the player isn't moving from left to right, but we've just jumped, then we know that we're not moving. So after we're done jumping, go back to the idling animation. However, we don't know how to go ahead and check and see have we jumped and have we finished jumping. Do that. Go back here to the parameters tab in the animator. Go to the little plus icon, click it, and we're going to go ahead and choose Boolean. And we're going to name it is jumping. One word, capital I, capital J. Okay. Now, by default, no, the player is not jumping, so we'll leave that as false. Back here, with the transition from player jump to player idle still selected, we're going to click down in the conditions, the next add to list, the little plus icon, and we're going to say if is jumping is false, okay? Meaning we're not jumping anymore, and we're not moving left to right, go to player idle. However, click the transition from jump to run, okay? Uncheck has exit time, set transition duration to 0. Now, however, if, go ahead and get both in here, if is jumping is also false again, we're only going to go from jump to run if it is jumping is false, and speed is greater than 0.01. So not only are we no longer jumping, but the player is moving left to right. That will go ahead and allow us to know whether we want to go from jump to player idle or player run. Go ahead and save Unity. Now we need to add some code to make this work, because right now is jumping doesn't get updated. So we're going to go back to the player movement script, and here is where we want to add it. When the player goes ahead and presses the spacebar to cause the character to jump, we want to do animator.setBool. We want to set isJumping to true. We also should go ahead and put the jump flag, because if the jump flag is turned on, meaning that we've jumped, we likewise want to go ahead and set isJumping to true. Yeah. On landing, when we land, we're no longer jumping. That means we want to set animator.setBool isJumping to false. Yeah. And that should go ahead and take care of what we need for jumping. Now let's go ahead and let's run the game. You're going to notice that I can run, I can have idle, but if I jump, it doesn't appear to do anything. Now that, unfortunately, is because of a bug in the Character Controller 2D. Any workarounds to that problem go ahead and create other issues with platformer games. So we'll go ahead and for now we're just going to assume that the animations work right. What I really wanted everybody to see was how to deal with the animator and adding more complex transitions between things, okay? And understanding what the any state is. If we go ahead and find a solution to the jump not playing the animation, and it is playing it, it's that it plays the first frame and then stops. If we can find a solution to that problem, then I will go ahead and include that in a future video. Thank you very much, everyone.